coming up this week on the Lifestyle Show 895, we've got loads of new builds to talk about. We've got some smart home email, and we'll be talking about that. I'm going to talk about my films now. I've posted some of them and some of the music stuff and some new gadgets and lots more. So let's get straight to Gary. Gary, good evening.
Good evening.
It looks like you're relaxing in your living room tonight.
I am, yeah. So it's like change of location tonight to normal. Not out in the studio tonight.
Yeah. Okay. So are you using your phone?
I am using my phone. Yeah.
Oh, that's actually quite good, actually.
Well, it's on a 5G signal now, so it's quite impressive actually. The data contact. I'm getting around about 800 megs downstream. Not quite so much upstream, but that's pretty impressive.
That's good. Yeah, I like that. And also coming to you from the new version or preview version of Teams tonight as well, on my device.
Yeah, not on my device, so I don't know how that works.
Yeah, on the this is the new. Welcome to the show. We'll start with talking about the new version of Teams because that's what we're using, and Microsoft released a preview of the next version of Teams. Now I had to enable the preview in my domain, so this is on my personal tenant rather than my corporate one or anything like that. But so I installed that new version, and actually it does look quicker. It seems quicker. It's quicker to open. It's quicker to go from screen to screen, and the whole thing just feels a bit better. I don't know whether if I share my screen, you really can see. It's pretty bare, my private Teams, because there's not much in it. There's only me in it. I'm the only person in the team in my OU. So, but yeah, it is quite quick to move around, and it does seem better. And you've also got an option to switch accounts there. So you, I know you could do that in the old one, but supposedly this is quicker to switch. So I haven't tried that yet. I suppose I could try my corporate one on there or something like that, but. Yeah, it does seem better. The reason why I wanted it is because Microsoft said the avatar feature preview was in it, but I couldn't find that, so I don't know whether that's. It's definitely there, and Microsoft did loads of blog posts and things about it, but nowhere does it tell you how to enable them. You have to have the preview version. That's the first step, which I've got that far, but I've not managed to get it any further. So, because I thought I'd use the avatar tonight, which is. And I think the idea of the avatars is for people without cameras, isn't it? Like, for example, now you're having to sort of balance your phone. You may just want to use the avatar, and it uses the audio to generate your avatar.
So why don't you only get the avatar option if you turn the camera off?
Let's try it. I'll turn my camera off. And yeah, I think when I saw it, no, it didn't do it. When I saw the video, it was It was somewhere else. It was video, or the documentation said it was in video effects, but I just couldn't find that setting anyway. I've been through sort of my device settings and everything else like that, and I couldn't see it. So the only thing I've got is like mirror and soft focus or something like that. So maybe I'm missing something, extra setting somewhere or like that. It's supposed to be coming out for to all OUs, all organisations later this year anyway. So, but I just thought I'd give that a try. But anyway, it certainly does seem to be faster to load, and I think for someone like you switching tenants, it might be much better for you. But I'm not quite. It makes it even more complicated then, because I think you've got to have the new version available on the tenant, and maybe if your private one is enabled and you're going as a guest on one that isn't, that gets quite complicated, I think.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, that's always been the problem, actually. Every time they come up with a faster tenant switching option, most corporates lag way behind on adoption. So you end up with not, including Microsoft, actually, sometimes. I've had to go back versions to join some Microsoft calls.
Yeah. Anyway, it's good. It's good anyway. So we'll see how it goes. But I quite like it. I think I like the UI of it. It looks pretty good. Right. So we've got plenty to talk about tonight. We've got few builds I want to talk about, bits of kit that I wanted to talk about. I did see there's some Windows rumors we could talk about as well. But first, we've got a question from Mike Parker who said, I have many Tuya devices, including a cold of Wi-Fi including colder Wi-Fi ones that don't integrate directly with smart things. I'm not quite sure what it means that, but the best way I found is to create 2 scenes in the Tuya app, one to turn the device on and another to turn it off. The scenes will then be visible in ST, Smart Things. Then Smart Things creates a virtual device that can then call those scenes when you turn the virtual devices on and off. Voila, Smart Things now controls your Tuya devices. Does that make sense to you?
It does
explain
make sense
it to me.
Yes, so I think this is from the comment I was making the other week about the heater I've got not being fully integrated in Smart Things, and actually that's exactly what I've done. I've created 2 scenes, one to turn it on and one to turn it off with the right settings on it. So when I'm not, it's a presence and a non-presence. If I'm present, then it turns it on, set to a certain level, and if I'm not present, it turns it on, but set to a much lower level, so it doesn't trigger on unless it's going to freeze or something. But the problem with Tuya is Tuya is not actually a manufacturer of most devices. They tend to license out to other companies, and it depends on who's paying the license fee, whether they'll actually do a Smart Things integration or not. They'll do an Alexa integration or Google integration or Smart Things integration, depending on whether you pay or not. And for simple stuff like switches and things, they'll just throw in the Smart Things integration because they've already done it. But if they have to do a special one, say for like the thermometer or the thermostat on the heater, then they don't tend to do it. And this is the workaround. You create scenes and then you have virtual and virtual switches are one of the most powerful, or virtual everything of one of the most powerful things in Smart Things. You can have virtual switches, you can have virtual sensors, you can have virtual. In my case, I've got a virtual calendar, which is really useful. I think I've kind of explained that before, but this script I've got, which basically fires when the sun gets into a certain position in the sky, is based on this virtual calendar. It tells me what the sun position is at any time of the day. So when the sun is at the right height and the right angle to blind me through the window, the blind comes down automatically, and that works. I mean, it just works all the time. And all I had to do there was create this virtual calendar and tell it what location it was in the world, and it worked from that. But you can also do things like you can use virtual contacts from Smart Things in Alexa, and that way you can integrate them into routines in Alexa, which you can control with your voice to then fire stuff back into Smart Things, which could then control the scene in Tuya's apps, in the Smart Life app, to actually then trigger the heater on and off. It gets very convoluted, this stuff. I'd like to see direct integration. It'd be a lot easier if every single bit of Smart Tuya equipment actually had a proper Smart Things integration. That would make my life a lot easier. But it's not likely to come anytime soon, and I can't actually work out even how to do it. There doesn't seem to be an API or anything I can call into to try and make it happen. They used to have an IFTTT interface, but that went away a while ago. So I mean, I know there's an Australian company which kept their subscription going on IFTTT and does integrate with some of Tuya stuff. So that's one option. But I mean, it's a pain really, because Tuya is one of the biggest manufacturers of smart home equipment in the world nowadays. I mean, if most Chinese smart home stuff uses Tuya as a back end, and that's even Wi-Fi or Zigbee. And although Zigbee's a kind of a standard non-standard, it's got a bit more standardized recently, and a lot of things following the Smart Thing. The Zigbee 3 standard can actually be integrated in Smart Things, even if they're not set up for that. There's still a lot of stuff out there which can't be, and there's a couple of people done some pretty clever drivers for Smart Things to actually allow them to load Tuya devices regardless of what they are, as long as they use the standard clusters that Tuya use. But Tuya also use some non-standard clusters. Clusters are just like a way of identifying what device what a device wants to do. That's like command groups. And if it's a recognised one, then Smart Things can actually process it and do things with it. If it's not a recognised one, then you have to have special drivers to cope with it. And I think that's a lot of the Zigbee devices out there, which are Tuya based, just don't work with Smart Things because they haven't got that cluster in there. So it's a bit of a pain, because it would be nice, because a lot of those devices are cheap, or also quite innovative. And sometimes there's a microwave presence sensor you get on Tuya, which is about a quarter of the price of any other microwave presence sensor I've seen. But at the moment, nobody's managed to get that integrated into smart things. So there's a lot of problems. I mean, but you could equally do this sort of thing with the scenes in Smart Life. So you could use Smart Life to presence sensors to trigger a scene, which you could then detect in smart things to see that it's been triggered. But it gets a bit convoluted to do all that.
Yeah. Well, that's the scenes is a good idea. So thanks, Mike, for
yeah, thanks. Because if I didn't know that would have been really useful to know.
It's good to know that. So the other things we had for this week. Oh, before, have you got your heater all installed now?
Yeah, it's all up on the wall, plumbed in properly, and it works brilliantly, I have to say. And I've been checking the energy usage over the last week and a half since I had it installed, and it's about 10% of what I was using previously for heating the place. And it only comes on very rarely, actually. It comes on sort of about 15 minutes here and there during the day. And it does warm the place up really quickly, and then the walls radiate heat, which is back at you. So you feel like on a you got the sun on your back or on your front, depending where you are in the room.
Yeah,
it's not pleasant.
Yeah, that's interesting, that, because I'm considering converting part of the garage into a utility room. To put washing machines and all that kind of things in there. And I was thinking what to do for heating there. I could run radiators. I could, but I could also look at one of these infrared heaters as well, because there's not going to be anybody spending a significant amount of time in there, but it needs to be not garage coal, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And there's a great thing about those. It's like walking. Someone described it as like walking out of a cloud cover on a summer's day, and you suddenly walk into the sun, and it's that kind of instant warmth you feel. You feel warm. The air around you may not feel warm, but you feel warm.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I might look at that and see if that's any good. Yeah, I might look at it. It's certainly probably cheaper than running pipes for central heating and things like that. Yeah, so I'll have a look at that. Okay, so moving on, we've got we had a few builds last week. After having nothing the week before, we got beta builds. I think we had we might have had a release preview one. We certainly had a dev and canary builds. Not a huge amount in them. Let's start off with the dev build. So, So we had 23419 for Windows Insiders on the dev channel. I got this in when installed. This one, Microsoft also made available a ISO as well, because they've changed those links now. Actually, I've just noticed as well, you don't get the share when you hover. You don't get the share buttons gone. When you hover over a window, I can normally just share the Edge tab, but I can't. So there's one bug in the beta version. I can share it this way. So normally I just hover over the window at the bottom and it has a little share button, but it's gone. So they released the ISO because I think it was actually quite handy to have the ISO, because if you had a build that was on dev and then automatically jumped to canary, if you wanted to put it back to dev, you need an ISO because you've got to wipe it, and so you could at least do this. So that had the kernel dump feature. I remember we talked about that kernel dump feature. It must have been maybe last year. Not something the average user needs to use. It's more of a Microsoft tool, isn't it, for debugging things, live kernel dump. Yeah,
I'm all developer tool. Sometimes developers find it quite useful.
I suppose for drivers and things like that, it's quite handy.
Yeah.
But it's also added support, and you can see this across quite a few different of the builds. That's this last week. USB 4 in the settings, you can go and have a look at your USB 4 hubs and devices. I haven't seen any devices, anything USB 4. None of the Surface devices have got support for that yet, hasn't it? I think it's the newer chipsets that are coming out with that on.
Yeah, I haven't got a device which supports USB 4 yet. So.
Yeah. But if you do, then there's a new setting page in there for you. And the other thing that I know a lot of people like is show the seconds in the system tray. So you've got, as well, just having the clock, you can get it to show the seconds as well, which is quite good. And the VPN icon as well. So that was a dev channel build 23419. But we also got a Canary build, which was 25324, which did have some new features in it, although, as ever, the A/B testing got me, and I didn't get to see this. I don't think many people have seen that, because I've seen a lot of people asking about it. But the widget board has been reorganized now, so it's now a three-panel view, but with the widgets down the left-hand side and the feed down the right-hand side. So currently, if I go on my machine, they're just all mixed up. You've got the feeds and the widgets all in different places, but now they've split them. So I think probably what insiders will probably ask for is to turn off the my feed, because that's just general news, isn't it? And a lot of them are a bit clickbaity. So yeah, it'd be nice if you could turn that off and just have the widgets panel. So once I get that set in, I'll see if I can find a way of doing that, because I actually think that would be a cleaner UI than just those widgets. And then if you can have 3 columns of 3 of widgets, you've almost got your live tile start screen from Windows 8 there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd like to see that. So once I haven't had set in yet, so hopefully I'll get that soon, and then I'll be able to have a play around with that. But I do like the look of that. Also, USB 4 setting was in there as well. Unsafe passwords on the clipboard, and some other bits and pieces. So that was it for Canary channel. And then we also got a build for beta channel with USB 4 on there. So that USB 4 thing hit Canary, Dev, and beta all the same time. So it does. I'm glad Richard's not here, actually, because he would start to say, well, what's the point of this thing? Because your feature, I suppose, there's not a huge amount of risk for an information panel in settings, but it hasn't gone through the usual Canary Dev beta. It's gone out to the wall.
Someone at Microsoft really wants to use USB 4.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is, isn't it? Yeah, it's probably someone on the Surface team testing the next version of the Surface, and they're trying that. And there are some other bits in this beta one as well. The clipboard 2-factor thing that was on the dev channel a couple of months ago, and the VPN icon, which was also on the dev channel a couple of months. So that has made its way through now, and the seconds thing as well. So they've made the way through, and some other bits and pieces on there. So there was quite a flurry of activity last week for these builds, but still nothing too exciting. I really think that the Canary build, what they should do on that now is not do any A/B testing and just throw everything at Canary. They don't have to document it. They can just get as much feedback as possible, and then when they're ready to test it, put it into the dev channel, and then do the control releases and all that kind of thing. They really ought to push. I know people are always a bit sense of entitlement of what you should have and what you shouldn't have, and people don't want get upset if a build breaks. But I think they really need to, for the Canary, to just really make it a bit bleeding edge now. And it's very stable, but it'd be nice to make it really bleeding edge now. So those were the builds last week. There was actually quite a few, but some interesting things on there. Now, last week I talked about the 8mm films, so those films that I got back. So I have uploaded those up to YouTube, or one of them anyway. So, and I've got a little article on how I got those back. The Scaborough Historical Society quite like these videos, which I thought they would do. But yeah, you can check out those are on YouTube. So these are the films that has 60 years old now. You can check out the music as well, which I made with the Mellotron. But I actually had a bit of a Google as well. I'll use Google Maps to find the locations and see how things have changed which was quite funny. So some things have changed a lot, some things haven't, but yeah, that's Scarborough Harbour. And actually, I could pretty much find the exact point on Google using Street View of where my grandfather was when he took that, because you can see it pretty clearly. But yeah, it was pretty good fun. But you see, it's good quality. I showed some of this last week. The sea battle was quite good. Now, I think I said last week I wasn't going to do any music for this one, but I did do the Mellotron music, and I did do a bit of Foley as well. So I put some Mellotron on the Mellotron tapes. There are some explosions, so I synced those up with the explosions in the video. So which actually took me ages.
I can imagine.
Because I was doing it, I had no technique to it. I was literally just dragging the sound until it lined up.
Yeah.
But yeah, and this, do you know, this battle is at, I think it's Peasman Park in Scarborough. I've got the details on the YouTube in the chapters. And it's Peaceholm Park, I think it is, in Scarborough. And they still do this, believe it or not. The next one is in July. And I watched their videos from the last one, and it looks exactly the same. So they've been doing this for over 60 years. I don't know when they first started it, but anyway, I watched the video from last year, and apart from the video quality and the way that people were dressed, it could be the same. It could be the same taken at the same time. It's amazing to see that that battle exactly the same 60 years later. Anyway, so yeah, and then I got I couldn't find the train line. Actually, I didn't find that. I'm sure maybe it's still there somewhere, but I couldn't work out exactly where it was. But these stair lift things and the tram car, whatever they call them.
It's a word for it, I can't think what it is.
Yeah. And I found the park where the water skiing was in as well. So yeah, it was good fun doing this. And there's a bit, I think, of Bridlington Harbour. That's Bridlington Harbour. Yes, Bridlington Harbour. See the guys in their overalls and flat caps and everything else. Yeah. So and then there's the park as well at night. So apparently some of this is still there as well. Anyway, I had great fun doing it. I think I mentioned to you last week I did the second one, which was the family one, which I haven't bothered to upload because it's only really relevant to the family. And I did the music as well. I did the Mellotron music. Apart from the last 5 minutes, I had some new music which I composed in a sort of prog rock 70s style, but quite more emotional. The idea was to poke a bit of an emotional response because it had a sunset and everything else. So my grandfather, he edited this into a story and then he made it have an end. So I did give it sort of music to do it justice effectively. So I showed it to my sister, and I didn't let any of the family watch this. No one had seen these apart from me until I finished it. So we had a viewing on Sunday, and we watched it. And it did get the emotional response that I was kind of getting. My sister was quite emotional. It actually got me as well, and which was quite strange because I wrote the music, I edited it, I synced it up and everything, but still it was quite emotional to see, because it's the same for all families. You've lost people, and no one in these videos is around now. So it's my mother as a 12-year-old or whatever she was, and it's my grandparents. So it's really nice. So obviously my sons got to watch it. They remember my grandma, so they could see her. So it was a nice thing to do anyway. So for the total of it cost me about 65 quid. It was well worth doing. A great service from Bushy Digital, which I've included a link on the blog post as well. And we've got that now forever. It's in various formats in different places. So yeah, it was really worth doing.
Well, I was doing a clear out the other day myself, and actually found a lot of the old single 8 stuff I used to do. So I might have to have a go at that, have a look at that myself and see what I can come up with.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, it was a fun project to do. It was great to almost finish what my granddad did. You started 60 years ago, adding the music and getting it all edited and everything else. But he did a brilliant job at the time of doing the editing and putting the story together. I would just added the sound effects and the music. But yeah, it was quite good. So anyway, the Scarborough one's on there. I'm sure I'm sure that if you're from Scarborough or Bridlington, or you know that, have a look, because it's good to see. And I think, I'm not sure I mentioned last week, but everybody looks old on it. You know, you're looking at people who are of various ages, but all dressed. I think it's because they're all dressed old, aren't they? Long coats, flat caps, you know, that kind of suits. You know, even my granddad's on there, and he's probably in his 40s, but he's got a one, but he's on his family holiday, but he's got a shirt and tie on. You know, it's just that's how it was, isn't it then?
Yeah, that's how it was. I was just thinking back to some of my silly stuff. We used to make way back. We were trying to emulate things like Star Wars and stuff like that. And I remember actually hand scratching laser beams onto frames of the film. They worked quite well because you could animate that way as well.
Yeah,
that was the way you put laser beams. You scratch the film.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with the editing. I mean, you're not cutting and pasting or non-destructive editing. You're doing destructive editing, aren't you? You're cutting with scissors, and you've got to. I suppose you've got to get the frames to match as well. Otherwise, you get half frames and things. I mean,
there were splicing tools you could use, which actually lined the sprockets up so you cut properly and got tungstens and stuff like that. But yeah, one of the reasons I really liked Single 8 over Super 8 was it was easier to rewind in the camera, so you could actually in the cartridge, so you could do overlay effects and sort of that sort of stuff, which you could also do with Standard 8, which obviously your grandfather was using. But it's interesting to see some of the special effects you could do better. And I've got some great things with people materializing and stuff like that. It was fun doing it at the time.
Yeah. Well, certainly if you've still got them, it's it's worth looking at. But I think for me, it was just this, you know, these images of people we've not seen before, these films, and to see. I mean, my grandma was, you know, she never changed apart from having grey hair. You know, she looks no different than she did in the 1960s, or you know, a few years ago. And I think he even put a title. I don't think it's on this. It's one of the other ones. He even had some title letterette that he stuck. It's had like a book. I think they weren't magnetic, but I remember they were stuck on like a board. You know, you could put your letters. And I actually remember playing with them as a kid. So they must have been knocking around when I was a kid. But anyway, it was good fun. So well worth the money that I spent on there. And it's something that it's priceless now that we've got those. And I did enjoy doing the music and the syncing up. So it has got me thinking about, well, what can I do next for that? So I haven't got any more of these silent movies to do, but I did enjoy doing that as a bit of a challenge. Okay. I also related. I did, last week I talked, or I think it was a couple of weeks, I did a video about the TX7, and a few people liked the song that I did for that. So that's now available on Spotify as well. So you can listen to that. In fact, I think I mentioned, actually I showed that last week, didn't I? Because I showed the cover that I used the Microsoft Designer to use. Also, when I was doing the DX stuff, this is the reverb unit I used. So I've done a little review of that. This is a 1990 Boss reverb unit. I could find hardly any information about it online, so that's why I created a video for it. So I've got a little bit of audio demos of that as well. So I'm just randomly going through bits of kit that not much information is available about online, and recording those. I think next one of my drum machines, I think is probably the next thing to do.
Well, if I remember next week, I'll dig up my the probably the rarest MIDI controller I've got. It's the old Casio saxophone MIDI controller.
Oh, the DH100, I think it was called.
Yeah, digital horn. Yeah, yes. Digital horn.
As used, I think used on one of the Pet Shop Boys used it on one of their tracks. I think it's on I Want a Dog off Introspective. I think that trumpet sound is that.
Well, what really amazed me is it's been in storage for yonks, years and years and years. And I obviously forgot to take the batteries out. And it still turned on, which was amazing. I couldn't believe it was still working. But, I'm gonna say that for my girls, so that they could have that to play on.
Yeah, that they'll like that. Yeah, it was. I remember it coming out. It must have been 80, 89, something like that.
Yeah,
maybe late 80s.
Yeah, it was very. It's difficult to get hold of back then. Yeah.
And of course the other thing, because at the time there was the Yamaha had a much more expensive wind instrument, VL1 or something like that, which were really expensive. But this was a really good. I think I might be able to find. Oh, go. Let's see if I can find a picture of one for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Is this the one?
That looks very familiar.
Yeah, DH100. Yeah, it was. I was right.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly that. The only thing I haven't got for it anymore is the carrying strap. I don't know what happened to that, but I've got spare mouthpieces and everything like that. Of course, you really have to make sure it's cleaned out, because it's just got basically a little tiny reservoir underneath that. The air doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
It builds up.
Has it got a release valve on it?
They're not really.
Right.
You take the top off and then you sort of dump it out, but it does get some. You can get some pressure control over it. It's not brilliant. I mean, compared to the Yamaha one, which was actually a proper wind instrument, this is not really a wind. You can blow in it and you can make it make noises that way. But a lot of people, and I think, I'm not even sure Pet Shop Boys did this or not, but a lot of the tracks I heard on it were actually just using the fingering on it rather than actually using blowing on it. But which you could do. But it was a good MIDI controller. I mean, it made for a different approach to MIDI control.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to your. I mean, that is something that you could definitely get a YouTube video out of, because these things are these were they're pretty, like you said, they were pretty rare at the time, and I imagine a lot of them ended up in landfill somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'd be interested to see. Now, if you get that hooked up to your D110, you probably get some interesting stuff out of it.
Yeah, well, that's what I did back in the day. I've got some interesting recordings from it way back in the day. But I'm not sure my D110 actually works at the moment. I was trying that out at the weekend. It seems to be has a fault at the moment, so I'll have to play a bit more with that. But
yeah, quite often there's two things that go on there. There's the caps on the power supply.
Yeah.
Or the internal battery, which does watch, the CR232s or whatever they are, they go as well. Yeah. But then you can factory reset.
I can redo that, but it's the caps are gone. It's going to be a bit more challenging.
Yeah, because you got to work out what they are, which ones have gone. It's quite interesting. Yeah. But I'll be interested to see. I would have to see you dig that out for us and give us a demo on the show next week.
Yeah, it's not. My playing's not brilliant. I used to be able to play it, but
Is it the same? Is it saxophone fingering?
It's
so
kind
saxophonists know how to play it.
Possibly. I think it's got its own kind of fingering on it.
Yeah.
It's not quite a saxophone. It's not. It's part trumpet, part saxophone, but. I mean, switch tones. It's got quite a few different types of tones you can play on it. A trumpet one being the one which actually makes some sense. The rest of them were a little bit not really usable, but
yeah. Well, I want to hear some good things out of that. If you get it hooked up with you, what was the Casio tone? The one that did the there was a calculator, wasn't it? The old Casio on the first one, the VL, was it VL1? Yes, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yep.
The little one. Yeah, that song with da da da, that was made with that one. Yeah, it's good. It was interesting times that Casio came up with some budget stuff, a bit different stuff at the time as well. Oh well, yeah, we'll look forward to seeing that. So I think the next thing I'm going to work at is probably a couple of drum machine videos. I'm going to do the TR505. It's hard to do just a full demo of a synth, apart from something that's a bit different, because there's no point in me doing existing common synths, but or the new ones or whatever. So
that was one thing I did use that horn for quite a lot, was for drum beat, because it was so easy to finger drums on it.
Oh yes, of course it would be. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh, I look forward to seeing that. I did actually see related to this. MIDI 2.0 is in development, and there was a recent conference in Tokyo, I think it was, for all the hardware manufacturers, music manufacturers and software, but also, is it Pete Brown from Microsoft that does the MIDI stuff? Yes, but Pete Brown was there. So he posted the picture, I think, on his Twitter of him there with the MIDI Association. So MIDI is the, for who doesn't know, musical instrument digital interface invented 83, 84 by Roland, Yamaha, a few the synthesizer companies to make music equipment talk to each other, and it uses these round 5-pin DIN, and it's still used today. A brand new instrument I got has got MIDI ports on them, so and still uses the same spec from slightly updated, but 1983. So I think that they're finally coming into a MIDI 2.0 specification, and interesting that Microsoft were there along with the equipment manufacturers, which I suppose makes sense because majority of MIDI stuff, a lot of people use, like I do with a laptop, Mac or PC, you need MIDI. And of course, that's what made the Atari ST so popular with musicians, because it had a built-in MIDI port.
And me.
Yeah.
Reasons I had the ST as well.
Yeah. So interesting, Microsoft, contributing to that, which is good to see. But I know Pete Brown is really into it. In fact, if you need a MIDI transfer utility and you get one, if you find the best one on the on the Microsoft store, Pete Brown wrote it. So he's a good guy. He's got a lot of synths. I've seen a few of his videos. Right. Okay. What else did we have? One thing I want to mention. Go back to Windows. Seen a couple of mentions of this. Now, I've not heard anything myself of a project, Core PC project. Have you heard of this?
No, that's news for me as well.
Now, this is, I've seen a few places posted, but Zach Bowden posted on Windows Central about Core PC, which is trying to come up with the same sort of goals as 10X, as a simplified version of Windows, but this time support legacy applications, which of course 10X didn't at all. And I think that was cancelled, obviously 10X. Some of the UI stuff went into Windows 11, but I think what they're trying to do now is to do the reverse of 10X, where 10X was sort of from the ground up non-legacy, and then they added bits in. I think they're starting with the whole legacy OS and modularize it to be able to remove some things. But one of the key things on this, different from traditional Windows, is the state separation. So state separation is where like how it works on Android, isn't it? Where the OS and the user data and the application data is split into different partitions, effectively, isn't it? So if you want to do an update, you only have to do you can do rapid updates by just updating the system partition. And in fact, I think, does Android work by having two partitions, a live one and one for the next OS update, and then it just applies that, and then you reboot and you're into the new one, and then the old one gets updated again and switch around. Something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
So it means that when you update an Android phone or an iPhone, you don't wait for sort of 2 hours for it to. Although to be fair to Windows, it doesn't. It no longer takes 2 hours to do the updates. They're a lot quicker nowadays, aren't they? But I think it's down to sort of less than an hour now. But still, it's not stateful. It's this new operating apparently is going to be is going to look at like state separation, but still with Win32 support. And I think that gives them the option of coming up with different OS configurations, maybe versions, to give you that flexibility. So maybe if you buy a cheap Chromebook competitor, it has limited support for legacy, and if you buy a workstation, Surface Studio, you've got everything there that you need. So it's supposed to be coming 2024. It's optimized for different silicon as well, so it's going to be interesting to follow that one. We speculated that Windows 12 will be coming next year. Microsoft themselves have said I think they said a while ago, didn't they, 3 years for major clients, but that doesn't mean to say it will be Windows 12. It could be just Windows 11 version 2024, or it could be Windows 12. But this would be an interesting project if they're going to have a lighter modular OS with modern update techniques, but still support legacy applications. That is the best of both worlds. So it's not surprised that Microsoft work on this. I think Windows 10X got us. Well, we saw it, didn't we? We had it. They gave it out as a preview. It got as far as early previews, but never got any further before it was canned in 2021.
A shame.
Yeah, but I think perhaps some of the learnings from that, we know a lot of the development went into Windows 11, but perhaps some of the core stuff has been, they've gone a different direction, but with the same goal of producing a lightweight, flexible, modern OS. And if it has legacy support, then that's every time they've tried to reinvent Windows, it's been the legacy support, isn't it, that's killed off the reinvented version.
Yeah, definitely. People expect Windows to support legacy. That's just it. I mean, way back in the Surface 1 days, the original Surface RT, it was the lack of iTunes which killed it, as we know. So I mean, that conversation with the John Lewis guys is sort of saying that was the main reason for returns. They were saying it doesn't support iTunes. I mean, that would be less important these days, but it's always the legacy apps which get it.
Yeah. Chrome, I think, is probably the one now, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you had a version of Windows that didn't support Chrome, then that's the one that's going to get returned. And I think even 10s, it gets 11. Is there 11s? I think there isn't there still, but anyway, it would be interesting to see. Like I said, this is just leaks or speculation or whatever. We don't have anything. We have got some conferences coming up. There's Build and some other Microsoft conferences, so maybe that'll be the time to talk about it, because they will need to get developers on board, even if it has got legacy support. I'm still sure they still want to get developers on board with it. So I think that's all the stories I've got for this week. Have you got anything else?
Nothing. It's really exciting. I think there's a couple of things bubbling on the EV world at the moment. There's sort of some new vehicles being launched and some interesting talk on weight limits potentially on certain vehicles. I haven't confirmed this yet, so this may be pure speculation. But I was hearing from somebody that one of the Channel Islands is actually allowing EVs, but only up to a certain weight, because the heavier EVs might actually damage their roads because they're not designed for cars, and they haven't allowed cars now, but they're allowing EVs. But that's sort of kind of where we are at the moment. But I mean, there's a couple of new cars being launched. The new Kia EV9 gets launched. Well, we're thinking that's sort of a very heavy, very big vehicle, probably meant more for US roads than UK roads. But it's interesting to see that we're starting to get people carrier type or the Range Rover equivalent, I guess, as EVs, and that's then an interesting conundrum for if you're anti sort of those large off-roaders in towns. Does that apply to the EV side of things as well? And I think I've seen with larger families now that there is a practical need for something bigger, but is that the right shape and size? And there's a lot of interesting things going on, but equally there's some very small battery EVs sort of starting to come out as well for commuting around towns and stuff like that. So yeah, it's interesting to see all that happening. What will be really interesting to see how Richard gets on next week, if he gets if he's back next week.
Yes, Richard should be back next week with us, and he should have his car and a granny charger, I think he said. Oh, you said you call him.
I was going to recommend he got a granny charger until he got his proper charger in, because as long as you don't use an extension cable and you can plug it into a unique socket, you can charge pretty well on the granny charger. What a granny charger! We use the term granny charger in the EV world, but basically it's the standard charger which will plug into a normal 3-pin plug, our 13 amp plugs sockets, and will charge off that slowly. But you can charge slowly overnight and get a reasonable amount of mileage in. So it's not an unreasonable thing. I mean, most commutes would be easily covered by a 30-minute plug charging overnight. It's just you really do have to watch the load on those, because they will be taking that full 13 amps, and most things don't. And if you've got a lot of things on the same circuit, that can cause issues. So do not plug them into an extension lead unless it's designed for that.
Yes, it doesn't draw that current. Get warm. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen melted sockets. I've seen melted, and I've seen fires caused by it as well. So definitely be cautious.
Yeah. Well, yes, Richard should be back with us next week, so we can find out how he's getting on with that. It should be interesting to see how he gets on with that. Excellent. Right. Well, we'll be back same time, same place next week. You can always get in touch, like Mike did. You can get me on email, lifestyle.com, at iSticks on Twitter, which is how Mike got in touch, or various other means. You leave comments on YouTube, whatever, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. So, Gary, where can we find you?
You can find me Twitter at Gary WMA, or Gary WMA at mass.to. And she remembered it this week.
Excellent.
No, I think Mastodon's almost died a death, actually. Most people seem to be falling off of that, but we'll see. So.
Yeah, I think the Twitter is trying to include, they're charging you for to be included in the For You section. I don't know how much impact that'll have on traffic, but perhaps it's the signs of, I think eventually that they'll want you to pay to be a member. It'd probably pay to tweet, probably. You'd probably be okay to read, but if you actually want to tweet, you'll have to join.
Yeah, pay for tweet. I could see that happen.
Yeah, I think that will be the end of it for me then. I don't get enough back for that, but I mean, I've always enjoyed, or chatting with people and being part of the community on there. So it's a shame if it goes away, but yeah, these things happen. Anyway, we'll be back same time, same place next week, and I will see you then.
See you later. Cheers.